When China moved to install an oil rig in waters claimed by Vietnam, the result was a wave of violence and anti-Chinese riots in what was the latest flare-up in a series of clashes between Beijing and its neighbours. Are we now really seeing a more aggressive China? And if so, what, if anything, can the rest of the world do about it? Hello and welcome back to Analysis Review. With me to discuss the situation in the South China Sea are Christopher Hughes, Professor of International Relations at the London School of Economics, and our Chief Foreign Affairs commentator, Gideon Rachman. Welcome to you both. Chris, can I start with you? I mean, is this just more of the same? I mean, we have seen quite a lot of sort of standoffs and flashpoints.
I would call it an escalation of a process that's been going on at least since 2008 of Chinese assertiveness, which I think was really triggered by the global financial crisis and this hubris in China, this sense that China had the power to really assert its maritime territorial disputes. And this has been growing incrementally over the years. But the timing of this was very important because I think it was aimed more at the United States. Remember, Obama had just been to visit US allies in the region and was building up the US alliance system and balancing China. And the Chinese wanted to send a clear message to Obama and the United States that they weren't going to go along with this. And they've had a number of other initiatives to try and balance the US presence. So I think what the Chinese didn't count on was the local reaction in Vietnam, because they were thinking on the big geostrategic issues. And I think that probably took the Chinese by surprise, was the popular reaction in Vietnam.
Gideon, I mean, you've written about sort of where US foreign policy has sort of not been achieving the desired result. I mean, do you see this as a further example of that, of where, Obama went to Asia, but...
Well, I certainly agree with Chris that the best way of making sense of this is as a reaction to the Obama trip. Now, whether American policy and the pivot and rebalancing alliances works in the long run, we'll see over the next few years, but there's definitely an increase in the rivalry. And I was just in Asia last week, and the South Korean foreign minister who I saw speak gave a very striking phrase. He said, Pandora's box is opening in Asia. And he cited a number of incidents that have happened in the last month. There was the Vietnamese one, but then there's also been clashes between the Filipinos and the Chinese. There were Russian-Chinese naval exercises. There were American-Filipino naval exercises. A Japanese and a Chinese plane flew within 30 meters of each other. All of that's in the last month. So it tells you how heated the situation's getting.
Would you share that view, Chris?
Yeah, I think it is a very serious situation. It's not calming down in any way. It's actually deepening. There were hopes that when Xi Jinping became the new leader in China, he might calm things down. But it's going the other way still. And at the moment, the states in the region are having to face a very big dilemma of which way to go. Are they going to go with the US or with China? And Vietnam is the classic case. They've got to live with China, but they see China as a huge threat. So which way do they go? And are we really seeing a return to another Cold War? Because that is the kind of language that is being used in the region at the moment.
I mean, Vietnam and China also have famously had a sort of uneasy and at times aggressive, bad relationship. They've clashed militarily in the last few decades.
Well, for hundreds of years, in fact. I mean, the Vietnamese see China as a big imperial power, and it has been in control of Vietnam over the various centuries and dynasties, and they still see it in that way. So they need to balance Chinese power, but you can see that the Vietnamese government and the Communist Party is being very careful in trying to still engage with the Chinese leadership and contain those popular demonstrations and not let that get out of control. But it's more and more difficult as China tries to find the weak links in the region and picks on the Philippines, picks on Vietnam. It's now not pushing Japan so much, because Japan has pushed back very hard in a number of ways.
Gideon, is there also a sense, do you think, in Beijing that with so much of the world's attention on events, particularly in Ukraine, that they can do stuff and it won't sort of get noticed so much? And
I'm not sure about that. I mean, Beijing is obviously hard to read. It's an authoritarian system, and they make their decisions in a very kind of closed circle. And it's interesting talking even to Chinese professors. You get different opinions. So some of them will tell you there's been a marked shift in foreign policy. As Chris was saying, things have changed since 2008, and then particularly when Xi Jinping came in, and that he's closer to the military, they're being more assertive. Others say, no, there's more continuity, it's more reactive than that. As for Ukraine, again, that points in two directions. Some say, well, the Chinese are discomforted by Russia violating international law. My own view is that there may be an element of that, but equally they're looking to see has Russia got away with it? Can they annex a neighbour and get away with it? Because if they can, what does that say about American power in the world? And does that mean that there's then a green light to move on some of these other issues? And again, Chinese opinion is divided on that. Some say, yeah, our time is now. Others say, no, it's too risky. And indeed, America was keeping its powder dry in Russia and Ukraine precisely because it sees its major strategic battles with China.
Gideon and Chris Hughes from the LSE, thank you, and thank you for watching. To follow this story and other topics covered by our analysis team, please go to ft.com/analysis. Until the next time, goodbye.